All right, this is lesson 2.7 in algebra. Percent of change. Okay, dealing with percents. A lot of people don't like this. It's not super difficult once you wrap your brain around it. So let's get started on page 119. So here's the deal. The percent of change. There's a couple of things. One, you need to be able to understand that when something goes from 50 to 60, what happened to it? It increased, right? It increased. So whatever percent it increased, that's what you'd say is that it was 50 to 60 is actually a 20% increase. That's what you'd say. If something goes from 100 down to 70, you would say that there was a 30% decrease, right? Goes down as a decrease, okay? Here's how you know. It's pretty basic, so pay attention. There's actually like a formula here, okay? The formula is really simple. If I say, okay, something went from 20 to 23. If something went from 20 to 23, first of all, what do you know right off the bat? It was an increase, right? It went from 20 to 23, it went up. That's an increase. Here's what you do. Here's the formula, okay? It is the amount of change. This is what you do. That is the change, right? Over the original. This is what yours should look like. Do that right there. The triangle symbol in math means change. Okay? The triangle symbol means change. So, that's what you should write. If you want to, you can write down the change or the amount of change over the original amount. That's it too. This is the abbreviated version. That is the longer explanation version. Hopefully you only need this. It's the change over the original. Let's do our problem here. How much was the change? How do you figure out how much it changed? What do you do? What do you do? How do you figure out how much it changed? How much did it change? How much did it change? How much did it change? 3. How'd you figure that out? How in the world did you just guess completely? How'd you figure out 3? What did you do, Jem? How did you figure out it was 3? Yeah, but how did you figure that out? What would be a math thing to figure out how it went from 20 to 23? Subtracted, right? You went 23 minus 20 is 3. So you subtracted the two amounts and you found out how much it changed, right? You subtracted. So the amount of change was 3. What was the original amount? How much did it start with? 20. So there it is. That actually is going to be a percent. Here's how you figure out how much something is in a percent. Are you paying attention? We did this last year, but I'm going to show you exactly what to do. I'm going to rewrite it down here so I have room. 3 over 20. The change over the original. You go like this. If I go, okay, 3 over 20. Here's the question. We just figured out that this is what it is, right? We figured out that the change is 3, the original is 20. And I go, okay, well, how much did it change? What percent did it change? What percent? Do you remember what we put down for whenever we use the words what percent? Do you remember what it is? What do we put down when we use the words what percent? If I go, I want to know what percent is that. Do you understand what I'm saying? We figured out the answer, but now I need to turn it to a percent. So I could say, so what percent is that? All right, so what percent is x over 100? X over 100. Whenever I use the words what percent, x over 100 or n over 100. So if I go, I want to know what 3 over 20 is what percent? I want you to see this again. 3 over 20. We figured that out. That's what it was. And here's the sentence that you're going to create. 3 over 20 is, that's the equal sign, right? Is, and then you go, what percent? And how do you, what do I write down when I want to do what percent? X over 100. So now I have my, what is this thing called? No. proportion, right? I have my proportion. It is an equation, but this is a very special type of equation called a proportion. I have my proportion, and now I can solve it. Did we learn how to solve this stuff yesterday? Yeah, right? Line on the equal sign, cross multiply. 20x equals 300. Divide by 20. Divide by 20. X equals 15. So what's my answer? If I said, what was the percent of change here? 15% increase, right? It was a 15% increase. Question, Barbie?
So on this one, if you do 3 divided by 20, it equals 0.15, which is 15%. So does that work for all of them, or is it just a coincidence with this problem?
That works.
So you can just like make it a division problem?
Yep, it works. No question. Another thing, let's do what she just said. If we end up having this 3 over 20, for those of you, that's one way. That is a surefire way is to go, is what percent? That's one way to do it. A lot of people don't like to use decimals. I prefer fractions. I really do. This is how I would do it. But whatever, you can do whatever you want. Here's the deal. If I want to go like this, and I want to turn that fraction into a decimal, I first have to turn that fraction into if I want to turn that fraction into a percent, I first have to change it into a decimal. How do you change 3 over 20 into a decimal? You simply divide it. In your calculator, you would put 3 divided by 20. What's that come out to? I'll tell you what it comes out to. It comes out to 0.15. That's what it comes out to. Exactly, 0.15. To change a decimal to a percent, what do? Move the decimal over 2 spaces. 1, 2. Oh my goodness gracious, it's 15%. Does that make sense? I'm not saying which way is better. I'm just telling you, you got to figure out, you got to use one of these 2 ways because it's really the only 2 ways to do it. Yes, Bubba?
If the equation, it's like a decimal point, then it's like a bunch of numbers?
In the end, it will always tell you to round to the nearest. Make sense? Yeah. Always, look, no matter what it is, I don't care what it is, let's do 14.864 over 99804. And guess what I can always do? I can put equals x over 100.
You know what I mean? Like when a question that goes equal into 100, you feel like for this one, 20 times 5 is 100, and then times 5 by 3.
Right. Well, I don't know how often this would happen. I don't know how often does it happen. Just you just got to know that you're allowed to do it, right? Something else too, like is that what you're talking about here? So if it was 3 over 20 equals x over 100, another way to look at this, well, times 5 times 5. You see what I'm talking about? That's what he's saying. You could figure out it was 15% just by looking at it. It will just depend on the question. Okay, let's do one that's not quite so simple. Let's go. Let's do the original is 66. The new is 30. I want you to tell me the percent of change here, okay? The original is 66 and the new is 30. So you have to figure out what happened. Remember this, change over the original. That's the secret. So here we go, it's very simple. What is the formula? What's the formula? Read it to me. What does that formula say? What does the formula over here say? So what does it say? What's the triangle mean? I'm talking about. What's the triangle mean? Change. Over the original amount, right? So how much did it change? How much did it change? Didn't change 6. It changed 36, right? I mean, it was 66, and now it's 30. How do I know what it changed? 36, right? So 36 over, what was the original? 66. And now that I have this, that's the answer, but I got to turn it into a percent. So I go 36 over 66 is what percent? Right? 66x equals 3,600. This is where you use a calculator here anyway. Divide by 66, divide by 66. What is 3,600 divided by 66? What is it? Somebody, what is it? Okay. Barbie, what is it? Nice and loud. 54.5%. Now, and there's probably more than just that, right? It probably doesn't come out even. In this situation, let's see what they say. Do they tell you round to the nearest whole percent? So what would you say this percent is? 55%. Make sense? 55%. And you'd say 55% decrease. It went from 66 to 30. That's the decrease. Got it? Okay. Now we start using things like discount and markup. You have to understand how businesses work here. If I am going to sell some candy in the money management store, how many of you in here have taken money management? Anybody in here taken it? Just two. So who here is in the middle of taking it? Two. Okay, here's the deal. When it comes down to it, those people buy candy from the wholesaler, which is me. They buy something from me. Let's just say that they buy something from me and that costs them $4. Okay? They buy something from me for $4. Can they sell it to somebody else? Could they sell it to you guys for $4? Could they? They could. Is that smart? No, they gave $4 for it, and now when they get money for it, they get $4. Did they make any money there? No. What they do is they have to mark it up. They have to increase the price so that they make some profit, right? So marking it up, normally what would happen is the ideal thing for something like that would be to double it, right? To double it. But let's just say that they were normally selling it for $4, and now they bought it for $4, and now they're going to try and sell it for $7. Okay, so they paid $4 and are selling it for $7. Does that make sense? And I want you to tell me, how much was the markup? How much did they mark it up? So, here's the deal. Nothing changes here. What's the rule for when I want to find a percent of change? What's the formula? Change over the original. How much did it change? It changed $3. What was the original amount? $4. Does that make sense? It changed $3. I'm selling it for $7. And I'm paid $4, so it changed $3. And how much was the original? $4. 3 over 4 is what percent? Do you see what I'm talking about here? Right? A lot of you know how to do this anyway, but I'm going to go through this. 4x equals 300. Divide by 4, divide by 4. X equals 75. 75%, right? I marked it up 75%. Make sense? What percent would it be if I doubled it? What percent would it be if I bought it for 4 and sold it for 8? What do you think that is? That's 100% markup, right? If something doubles, it's considered marked up 100%. Okay? What happens if I have this? I normally sell an outfit for $60. I normally sell for $60. Today, I'm going to have it on sale. And it's on sale for $35. No, we'll say $35. It's on sale for $35. Sale. How much of a discount am I giving somebody? How much of a discount am I giving? What formula am I going to use here? If the question is asking you what percent did it change, which would be like, how much did they mark it up? What percent did they discount it? Whatever. It's change over the original. How much did it change? How did it go from 60 to 35? How much is that? That's a $25 change over how much was the original? 60. 25 over 60 is what percent? That's how you say what percent? X over 100? 60x equals 2,500 divided by 60 divided by 60. What is 2,500 divided by 60? Right, somebody write it in. What is it? 0.41. What? That can't be true. 25 over 60 is going to be a big number, more than 0.4. 41.6666. So it's, if I say what percent did it change, and I want you to round to the nearest whole percent, what percent did it change? 42%. And it would be a 42% discount. Today they were giving 42% off. Does that make sense? Okay, what about this? What if I want to add tax? And I say, okay, an item normally costs $45. That's how much it costs. But they're going to add 7% tax. How do I write 7%? Remember, what percent, listen to this. When I say what percent, what do I write down? X over 100. So if what percent is X over 100, how do I write 7%? 7 over 100, right? 7 over 100. So let's do this. I have $45, and I'm going to multiply that by 7 over 100. Multiply that by the tax. How do I do this? I want to know this. The question says, $45, 7%, how much is the tax? So I go, okay, well, 45 times the 7% is the tax. Right? You have to be able to come up in your head with your sentence. What is 45 times, well, let's reduce this stuff. Can I reduce anything? This becomes a 9, this becomes a 20. What is 63 over 20? What is 63 over 20? What is, just do it. What does the calculator say? 3 point what? 3.15. That is dollars. That is, so 63 over 20 equals $3.15 tax. That's how much the tax is. If I want to know how much the whole thing is now, including the tax, what do I do with that $3.15? Add it to the original 45, so it'd be $48.15. Depends on the question. If they say how much is the tax, there's the tax. If they say how much is the whole thing now, you have to add it. It'll be $48.15. Does that make sense? This is nothing that you haven't done last year, right? What if they do this? Oops. What if they do this? Come on. Okay, they have an item that is normally $75, and they're going to take 30% off. They're going to take 30% off, and I want to know how much is the item after the sale. Okay, makes sense? Now, what am I going to do? I don't want to know the answer. I want you to tell me, what am I going to do? I want to know how much is the item after the sale. I have to figure out what? How much? What do I have to figure out? How much is it off, right? How much is 30% of this, right? I got to figure out what is 30% of that, and then what do I do with it? What's the question asking me for? What is it asking me for? What's the question actually asking here? How much is it after the discount? So then now, if I figure out what the discount is, 30% off of 75, what do I do with that? Is that how much it costs? 35%, 30% off, and I just, whatever number I come up with, that's the number? No, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? Oh my goodness gracious. You have to subtract it from the original amount, right? So let's figure it out. 30% off. In order to find 30% off, I have to find 30% of $75. 30%. How do I write down 30%? 30 over 100 times $75. Can I reduce anything? 90 over 4. What is 90 over 4? How much? 90 over 4 is 52. What is 90 over 4? 22.5. 22.5. So what is 22.5? There's a number there. What does that even mean? What am I trying to figure out here? What is 22.5? It's $22.50, right? That would be $22.50 off of the item, right? That's not how much it costs. That was 30% of $75. So that's how much it costs less. So then how do I figure out what is the actual item now? 75 minus 22.50. How much is my item? $52.50. Right? Okie dokie. I think I've shown you enough to get you done here. So I'm going to let you guys do it. The assignment is what does every fourth one mean? It means like it's the every other even. Every other even. So instead of 14, 16, 18, what am I going to have you do? 14, 18, 22, 26, right? It's every other even.